Today's submitted materials explore how the global head of indirect tax must evolve from a traditional compliance manager into a strategic organizational leader leveraging real-time tax data. And without any preamble, we are jumping straight into the first area of feedback for this critique, which focuses on the friction of architectural sponsorship.
Right, because the discussion of the global head of tax, assuming architecture sponsorship, presents a seamless transition, but overlooking the inherent organizational friction dilutes the realism of the execution.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the author neutrally summarizes this really strong argument about the architecture responsibility.
The idea that continuous transaction controls basically embed tax into the transaction process itself.
Exactly. So the tax head has to sit in on these ERP migration sessions and dictate the logic for the data orchestration layer, which makes sense on paper.
It makes complete sense on paper. But in practice, it feels like, it feels like a guest walking into a restaurant kitchen and suddenly trying to redesign the workflow for the head chef.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, yeah, maybe it's necessary for the food to come out right, but it is bound to cause a massive clash.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the weakness here. The material assumes that the IT and finance departments will just, willingly share or hand over this architectural governance.
Right, like IT's just going to say, sure, come on in, mess with our core systems. Exactly. The text beautifully explains why the tax head needs this authority, but it completely ignores the very real turf wars. It ignores the budget battles and the legacy silos that act as massive counter-arguments to this supposedly seamless integration.
IT departments are notoriously protective of their infrastructure. I mean, they are graded on uptime and low latency.
Yes, and inserting tax validation layers threatens both of those things from their perspective.
So what is the suggestion for the author here? How do we fix this?
We need to openly acknowledge this natural organizational resistance. Give the reader a strategic roadmap for negotiating and claiming this architectural authority, but without alienating their IG partners.
So shifting from just the why to the how.
Right. Focus on how to win the mandate. So, as a concrete example, the author could include a short section titled, maybe, Navigating the IT Partnership.
Oh, I like that. What goes in there?
In that section, you outline shared KPIs between tax and IT. You show how reducing downstream batch processing at month end actually saves IT server load.
Right, so you align their incentives. You're basically telling IT, hey, if you let me build this upstream, I save you processing power later.
Exactly. You speak their language. Another concrete example, and this is crucial for getting executive buy-in, is to share a cautionary tale.
Like a horror story?
Yeah, a hypothetical scenario or a sanitized real-world anecdote of a failed ERP migration where tax was ignored.
Like a company launching a new system in Latin America and suddenly failing invoicing mandates?
Yes, shipments frozen on the dock, millions of dollars in retrofitting costs. You use that as the cautionary tale to secure the mandate for tax architecture sponsorship.
That paints such a vivid picture. It gives the tax head actual ammunition for those meetings.
It really does. And to show how this works practically, my third example would be suggesting a specific governance framework.
Okay, like what?
Like a joint tax data steering committee. Don't just say they need to collaborate, demonstrate what that collaboration looks like. Who's in the room, how often do they meet, how do they resolve conflicts?
Make it tangible.
Exactly. Now, moving on.
Wait. Actually, let's look at the next step in the journey. Because once the tax head successfully navigates that IT friction, right?
Yeah.
And they actually build this intelligence-generating architecture. Well, the next challenge becomes selling that newly captured data to the C-suite.
Which brings us to the section on the 3 conversations your CFO is not having.
Yes. Working capital, supply chain risk, and regulatory entry. It's a section that really highlights how to elevate the role of tax.
It's a fantastic concept.
It is, but I have to push back on it a little bit. Does this material still sound a bit too much like a tax professional talking to another tax professional?
That is the exact trap here.
I mean, are we expecting the CFO to learn tax language? Or should the tax leader learn CFO language?
Well, positioning the tax function as a strategic asset requires shifting from tax-centric justifications to the commercial vocabulary that genuinely drives executive action.
So that's the topic sentence for this second critique.
It is. The distinct weakness here is that while the text identifies the right conversations, they are framed from the perspective of the tax function looking outward.
Like, hey, look at this great VAT position intelligence we have.
Exactly. It's a victory lap for the tax team, but that framing completely fails to directly hook into the CFO's existing burning pain points.
Right. The CFO doesn't care about that mechanics. They care about enterprise evaluation.
They care about EBITDA, they care about liquidity.
So the suggestion here is pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah. The suggestion is to invert the framing of these three conversations entirely. Lead with the enterprise-level financial metrics or the risk factors that keep the CFO awake at night.
Start with their problem.
Start with their problem and then reveal the indirect tax data as the unexpected, highly precise solution to those broader commercial problems.
Give me a concrete example of how to do that with the working capital conversation.
Sure. Instead of calling it the working capital conversation or focusing on VAT refund compliance, reframe the subhead to something like solving the liquidity blind spot.
Oh, liquidity blind spot? That instantly sounds like a CFO problem.
Right? And then you pitch it as reducing a 30-day delay in cash recovery down to 5 days. You frame it purely in terms of freeing up trapped cash to fund operations without taking on external debt.
That is so much more compelling than talking about tax compliance. What about the supply chain risk conversation?
For the supply chain piece, the text should provide a concrete script, like an internal pitch template that the tax head can actually use.
Give me an example of the scripts.
Something like, procurement is missing 15% of vendor distress signals. Our CTC validation feed can flag them in real time.
Oh, wow. So if a vendor's tax ID suddenly flags as invalid, you use that as an early warning system for supplier bankruptcy.
Exactly. You position tax data as a real-time shield for the supply chain. But there is one more crucial piece to this CFO translation.
Delivery?
Delivery. Add a brief discussion on how to format this data in a dashboard that fits into the CFO's existing morning review.
Right, because a C-level executive is not going to log into some bespoke tax-specific portal.
No, they absolutely will not. The data has to feed via API into the environment they already use. Meet them where they are.
Okay, so recapping where we are in the narrative so far. The tax head has won over IT to build the architecture.
Yep.
And they've won over the CFO with this commercial intelligence. But who is actually doing the day-to-day work here?
The million-dollar question.
Right. Which brings us to the final section of the piece, building the tax function. The author outlines this vision for a new team that combines deep technical tax knowledge with system architecture skills and data analytics capabilities.
It is a beautiful vision.
It is, but I can see what the author is going for here. And I just have to ask, are we telling the listener to go out and hire a mythical creature?
Basically, yes. A purple squirrel.
Right. Do professionals with deep global VAT knowledge and advanced data architecture skills actually exist in the current labor market?
The strategic vision for the new tax mandate is incredibly compelling, but the final sections on building the actual team lack the actionable depth needed to realistically staff this transformation.
Yeah, because the weakness is that it calls for deliberate organizational investment in hiring and capability development, but it just completely glosses over the severe market shortage of these hybrid professionals.
It states what skills are needed, which is great, but it leaves a major, glaring gap regarding where to find them.
Or how to build them from scratch. Because you can't just post a job ad for this and expect a flood of resumes.
No, the position will sit open for a year. So the suggestion to the author is to significantly expand this building the tax function section, offer realistic alternative talent acquisition and upskilling models.
Acknowledge that a single individual rarely possesses all these traits.
Exactly. Acknowledge the reality of the market, and then give concrete examples of organizational design solutions.
Like rotational cross-training?
That's a perfect first example. Propose a program where junior IT data engineers are brought into the tax department for a 6-month secondment.
Oh, so they sit with the tax team and learn basic compliance logic.
Yes, you manufacture that hybrid understanding internally. And then you do the reverse too.
Upskill the tax team.
Right. Introduce the concept of citizen developers within the existing tax team. You take traditional tax specialists and upskill them specifically on data visualization tools.
Like Power BI or Alteryx?
Exactly. You demystify the technology. They don't need to be full-stack engineers. They just need to learn how to manipulate the compliance data they already know, using modern tools instead of manual spreadsheets.
That feels so much more achievable. But what if you need an immediate structural fix? Upskilling takes time.
That's where the third concrete example comes in. Suggest a pod structure.
A pod structure. Okay, walk me through that.
Instead of relying on one omniscient employee to do everything, you create a singular working unit, a traditional tax expert, a data analyst, and an IT liaison.
And they all sit together and work as one team.
Yes, they share KPIs, they share the mandate. When a new regulation drops, the tax expert flags it, the analyst maps it, and the IT liaison instantly rewrites the query.
So they execute the logic, governance, and the performance monitoring mentioned in the text collectively.
Exactly. It changes the strategy from finding an impossible candidate to building a highly functional machine from readily available parts.
Wow, that is incredibly practical. Okay, to quickly recap the actionable takeaways for the listener today, first, you have to address the organizational friction of claiming IT architecture sponsorship. Give the reader a roadmap with shared KPIs and steering committees.
Right, don't just assume IT will hand over the keys.
Second, translate those 3 CFO conversations out of tax jargon and into commercial, EBITDA-driven vocabulary. Lead with the liquidity blind spots, not the tax compliance mechanics.
Speak CFO, not tax.
Exactly. And third, provide realistic team-building models that don't rely on hiring mythical hybrid talent. Use rotational programs, citizen developers, and pod structures.
The core essence of this piece is really strong, and we'd love to see these structural and strategic tweaks implemented. So please, apply these changes and submit your revised piece back to the critique for another look.
We can't wait to read it.